Alright guys, welcome back. Thank you for clicking on this video, and today we've got the biggest fights that the UFC could possibly make in 2025. These are the biggest possible, most hype, most impact, most name value fights that the UFC could make in one or two fights or today. Alright, so let's get started with the biggest one in my opinion. This is probably the biggest fight that the UFC could possibly make outside of a McGregor fight, maybe even bigger than McGregor is now, and that is Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall, okay? So, we all saw how massive UFC 309 was last weekend, and a big reason for why that event was so massive, why there were so many eyes on it, was the narrative of Jon Jones, the undisputed greatest of all time, ducking Tom Aspinall. So, Jon Jones has been lauded as the GOAT for years at this point. Years. And he just beat a guy that many considered the heavyweight GOAT. Now, he was 42, and a lot of people detracted from this one, including me. But the opposite of fighting a 42-year-old Stipe is fighting the up-and-coming Tom Aspinall. Now, Tom Aspinall is not the no-name, unrecognized person that Jon Jones and some people within the UFC seem to think he is, or seem to believe he is, or say he is. Tom Aspinall is well established. Even look on his YouTube channel, he has about 1 million subscribers. He gets hundreds of thousands of views every time he puts out a post. He's very well known, and this fight week has made him more well known than ever, right? He's beaten Alexander Volkov, Curtis Blades, and Sergey Pavlovich in a combined time of about 5 minutes, just over a round. Those are probably the three of the top 5 heavyweights out there, which is insane. There's no other contender or champion who has done that currently. And this fight could have the most incredible build-up in UFC history. They could market it as the GOAT versus the man who most believe will beat the GOAT. And not just beat him, take him out violently, possibly in the first round, okay? This is the most well-rounded, athletic, dangerous heavyweight we have ever seen, against who many believe is the greatest we have ever seen in this sport. The fight builds itself. The fight generates its own hype. This is the fight to make. I know it's going to be hard to make. I know Jon Jones is going to be hard to convince, but if the UFC has the money to spare, I think this would be worth it. And if Tom Aspinall wins, he becomes possibly the biggest star in the UFC. Depending on how he gets it done and how many eyes are on the event, he could become the biggest star the UFC has had since Conor McGregor. Speaking of massive stars, Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev. Right now, Islam is definitely a top 2 or 3 star in the UFC, right? He's not as big as Khabib was. He's not Conor, but he's getting there. He inherited most of Khabib's fans. Muslim people all around the world love him, and other people too. He's a likable guy. He's funny. He doesn't have the most outspoken personality, but when you see him, he has a great personality. He has a great fight style. Khabib wasn't necessarily boring, but Islam is definitely more exciting, more well-rounded. He's fought probably better opponents as well. Islam Makhachev is undoubtedly the pound-for-pound #1 fighter right now, but there's somebody who looks unstoppable on the way up, and that is Ilia Topuria. I think that he should be #2 or 3 pound-for-pound, definitely ahead of Jon Jones at this point. He just slept out Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski in the early rounds consecutively, and he did it in style. He did it with confidence. He did it with trash talk in the build-up. And at this point, Diego Lopez is a good contender in the division. The winner of Movsar Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling is a good competitor in the division. And while he takes care of those threats, Islam will fight Arman. But after those fights are done, I see no reason why Topuria can't go up to challenge for the lightweight belt. And Islam has good reason to accept this because this is probably the biggest fight he'll get, maybe for the rest of his career, barring a Conor McGregor fight, but that seems so unlikely at this point. And this would probably be the highest level fight that the UFC could put together in terms of skill, in terms of resume, and in terms of hype. I know that Ilia Topuria would do everything he could to make this fight massive. And listen, Islam isn't Volk, he isn't Holloway. He's not just gonna brush off Ilia's trash talk. I know these guys are all humble, but Islam, he trash talks. And he gets angry. He doesn't get angry, he gets sassy, right? He's a really sassy guy. He's a funny guy. And he's going to humor Ilia in the trash talk, and I think this build-up is going to be massive for the star power, for the skill, and for the trash talk. Alright, now we get to a Conor McGregor fight. Just because any Conor fight is going to be massive. Even though he hasn't fought in years, even though he's probably at least a little washed up at this point, his return is going to be massive just because it's Conor McGregor. He'll always be relevant. He'll always be the UFC's biggest star as long as he's around. And I think the best matchup for him, the biggest matchup, is Charles Oliveira. I think at this point, Charles Oliveira is one of the biggest stars, maybe aside from Israel Adesanya, in the UFC that isn't currently holding the belt. I think he's bigger than Sean O'Malley. And I think a Conor McGregor matchup would be massive for both of them. So obviously the main driving factor behind this one is Conor McGregor's star power, but Charles Oliveira also has a massive following. He's beloved. He has a super exciting style, just like Conor McGregor. So this fight is guaranteed to be a finish, in my opinion. It's guaranteed to be fun, and it's guaranteed that whoever wins, people are going to be happy about it. Okay, moving on. We got another possible matchup with Islam. Now, maybe this could come after Islam's fight with Arman, before he fights Topuria, right? Because Topuria has to deal with Diego Lopez, maybe Volk, and maybe Movsar Evloev or Aljamain Sterling. But in the meantime, I do believe that Shavkat Rakhmonov will beat Ian Gary and take the belt off Bilal Muhammad, and I believe that this fight could happen at the end of the year, and Islam would deserve it if he beats Arman and Ilia Topuria isn't ready. There are no more deserving contenders in the lightweight division to keep Islam there. I think he more than would deserve a move up to welterweight. And he said before that he would not like to challenge Bilal Muhammad, so this is all contingent on the fact that Shavkat Rakhmonov would have to defeat Bilal Muhammad or gain the welterweight belt in some way. And this would be another extremely high-skilled matchup. Probably the best fighter at 155 against maybe the best fighter at 170. And Islam's chance at a lot of glory against an opponent that is going to gain him a ton of respect. Especially given that people might have doubts about him fighting 145ers coming up. This will be his chance to fight a massive 170 pounds and really gain even more respect, even though most fans already believe he's the current best fighter in the UFC. Alright, on to our last matchup, and this isn't a super fight like the last few fights, but I think this is probably the biggest fight you can make with a title holder against their normal contender, okay? So this is just a normal champion fights their number one contender, but I think this might be Alex Pereira's biggest fight in the UFC, bigger than either of his Izzy fights even, because this fight has been hyped up for so long. Alex Pereira, in my opinion, is much bigger of a star than Izzy ever was when they fought. So Alex Pereira against a guy that a lot of people see as the opposite of his style, right? Or the kryptonite to Alex Pereira's style. A good striker who has that great grappling base, who's going to be able to take him down maybe if he needs to, who's also going to be able to strike with him and potentially knock him out. People love Alex Pereira. A lot of people like Magomed, but even more people dislike him. Either way, those people are going to be tuning in to watch this fight. I think this is an amazing fight, probably the best fight at light heavyweight, the best fight you can make. I think this is going to be a great one. I'm excited to see it, and this should happen next. Could be UFC 312, UFC 313. Either way, I'm excited for this one, and I think this is going to be massive. And that's the video, guys. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you like. Have a good day.